What an elder sees while sitting down, a youngster cannot see even when standing on the tallest tree. It is only when I sit and look back, reflecting over all what I've been through, that I finally understand this saying. My name is Inalisa, a successful designer. I have my own clothing brand, and I am a model for the same brand, alongside with my triplets, Rani, Rami, and Ravi. Here is my story. Before we continue with the story, do not forget to click on the notification button in order to get notified at every new video posted. Thank you. I met Evan, my husband of 5 years, in high school. My parents didn't want me to date Evan and warned me against it, but I was in love and gave a deaf ear to everything they ever said. Evan was the goalkeeper of our school football team. He was tall, well-built, with a very charming smile. It was some sort of a prestige for me to date him. By the final year of high school, Evan and I had moved together in a studio apartment, which my parents were paying for. My parents did not know about it, and my friends tried to make me change my mind once, but I gave a deaf ear. Our community didn't have a university, so my parents were forced to get me a house in the city where I would finish my studies and then continue to the next level. At the end of the day, all of my friends walked away from me, and it did not bother me. I had the most important person by my side who loved me very much, and he always put it this way. He said he was enough for me. How cute! I did not come from a wealthy family, but my parents never made me feel it. Evan grew up with his mother, who was a single mom, addicted to alcohol and always migrating from one place to the other with a new man. So he had never really known the place of a parental authority. My father owned a convenience store and my mother was a homemaker. She used to sew for people, but she did it mostly because it was her passion and not because of the money, despite the fact that she was very talented. Since I was the only child, it was rather easy to make ends meet, and my parents wanted me to get to the level where they never reached in this life. So they used to call me the apple of their eye. They did not only provide me with a good education, but also taught me the ways of the Lord, though I wasn't really interested at that time. All of that changed when my parents died in a car crash on their way to my graduation. That was supposed to be the happiest day of my life because Evan and I were planning to announce our engagement to them and also turn our graduation party into an engagement party. They had just learned through our neighbor's son that I was living with my boyfriend in the studio they were renting for me in the city. I can just imagine their state of mind during their journey. That was the start of my misery. I could not believe that my parents had died while probably they were still mad at me because of my disobedience. I blamed myself for it all, and today I still keep blaming myself for that. Their funeral was the whole town affair since the community loved my parents so much. There were people who literally had their hearts in the palm of their hands. They always had a cup of tea or coffee and a plate of something to eat for a friend, a neighbor, or a stranger. To them, showing love and kindness was their purpose on earth. As funny as it may sound, my parents were the weirdest people I had ever met in my life. I had to sell my father's convenience store to cover the expense for the funeral. The crowd that turned out was so large. The good thing is, the same people were the ones who were always around my parents when they were leaving. After the funeral, Evan and I had our engagement party, and some few months later, we got married. All this while, I didn't feel the absence of my parents too much because I had my love with me. I was so grateful for his presence, and somehow I felt indebted towards him. Sometime after our wedding, Evan advised me to sell my parents' house, but I refused. It was so full of my childhood memories. He insisted that I should start afresh, and holding on to past memories was going to hurt me the more. So I accepted. If only I knew what was in store for me. We used the remaining money for the sale of the store to start a business. We were selling sports equipment, and since Evans was in the milieu, he was at the management, and I was just there to assist. But Evan was so terrible at management. Soon we started struggling with finances. 5 years later, I was strapped with triplets, 2 boys and a girl, and Evan did not want anything to do with them, even though he didn't talk me out of it, but his behavior said it all. One day, I asked him to help me check the kids while I was preparing his breakfast. One of the boys threw up breast milk that I had just given him on Evan's shirt. To my greatest surprise, he threw the baby on the bed in a fit of anger, and I heard the baby scream. I rushed to the room. I found the baby lying on the bed, crying loud. As I tried to carry him, I touched his left arm. He screamed the more. When I tried to ask Evan what had happened, he pushed me aside angrily and walked out. The whole day the baby didn't stop crying, and even with high temperature, so I decided to go for a checkup. The doctors had to do a scan, and it was discovered that he had a broken left arm. I almost passed out, seeing my baby crying helplessly in pain. A bandage was put on his arm and he was administered treatment for the pain and fever. When we returned home, I noticed Evan had come home smelling a different perfume and he had lipstick stains on his shirt. He didn't even bother to ask what happened the next morning. He hurriedly left with a suitcase, saying he had an out-of-town necessary business trip that he couldn't afford to miss. I received the first installment of the money from the sales, and Evan started pressurizing me to give him part of it, so he would expand our business, but I refused. One day, I was working in the garden and the kids were asleep. By the time I went in, I found that 2 of them were not in the room. I searched the house from roof to floor, but I didn't find anybody. I tried getting to Evan, but his line was not reachable. I rushed to the police station, but they said it was only after 24 hours that they could react. I was lost and I didn't know where to turn to. After about 2 hours, a strange number called. The voice seemed to be masked. They had my kids and they were asking for a huge sum of money for ransom. Why was life doing this to me? My babies were the only ones that gave me hope for a better future. I accepted to give them money, but I didn't have enough in hand to be able to pay the ransom. I stayed awake till morning, and then when I got up, I went back to the police station the next day. It was not officially 24 hours, but I needed help. I talked about the call, and after some hours, the police decided to get on the matter, and after a week, it was discovered that Evan was the one behind the kidnapping of my kids. I knew he hated my children, but I couldn't help to believe that Evan would go as far as doing this. I felt so disgusted by all that was happening. I took my babies for a checkup immediately, and they both had lost weight, and they had a very high fever. But after a week in the hospital, they both were okay once more. If only I had listened to my parents, I would have not gotten into this situation. Evan was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment, and I filed in for a divorce. I left town with my babies. I bought a small apartment and started doing what I took from my mother, sewing. After some time, I enrolled in a fashion designing school where I perfected my skills. 5 years later, I am now my own boss, and my kids are my partners. I will never understand why my husband became that cruel, but all I know is that true love won't do that.